Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. This one is all about making Snow's skirt. This is Snow from the TV show Once Upon a Time, and I've got a whole series up on my channel already about making all of the other components of this cosplay outfit. I've also been posting all of the close friends stories to my Instagram for Patreon supporters, which goes into the more nitty-gritty detail progress of this project in real time if you are interested in that. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I started with folding my fabric. I'm using this curtain fabric that I got from Trads. It's a place where I live and they sell curtain fabric, obviously, and that's what I've chosen to make these skirt panels. Reason being is because curtain fabric has a very nice weight and drape to it, and that's exactly what I needed for this part of the outfit. So I measured the length of how long I needed these skirt panels to be from my waist to the floor. I think this was around 43 inches or something like that, and I just started by cutting out those rectangle panels from my curtain fabric. So here you can see me cutting this fabric out 4 times. That's because I wanted to line each of these skirt panels with the fabric, like with the same fabric, because I didn't like the underside of this curtain fabric. As you can see, it's like a weird darker vertical line sort of pattern, and I just didn't really like that look. It's also a little bit shiny, so I wanted to keep it consistent with the right side of the fabric. So I'm going to line each of the pieces with the same fabric. Now what I'm doing is cutting up a diagonal along the rectangles that I just cut. So I am cutting through 4 layers of fabric here. I always do this. I've found no issue with it, but sometimes people don't really like doing that because the fabric can shift. Anyway, I have cut the diagonal, and this is just so I get that nice angular shape up towards the waist and reduce the bulk at the waist seam. And once I've cut one side, I then flip that over and use it as a guide to cut the other side symmetrical. And this just means that I'm able to cut it symmetrically without having to fold the fabric over and have to deal with all of that, because like I said, there are 4 layers of fabric that I'm cutting through in this clip right now. And there we have the front panel pieces, and I'm just marking where the length of the fabric will be, and then just making sure to curve that a little bit as it gets to the edges. If you think of any skirt pattern, like a circle skirt, you always try and have those edges all be the same length and a bit curved. So that's what I'm doing, and I'm doing the same process of using what I cut out on one side and folding it over to the other side to use that as a guide. So here you can see me just draping that pattern piece on my body just to make sure that it is laying how I want it to. So I was pretty happy with that, and I decided to move on to cutting out the back skirt panel pieces out of the remaining fabric that I had left over. So this was all of the fabric that I had left over. So just using that triangular offcut piece, and again there are 4 layers of fabric that I'm cutting through here. And the back skirt panels, I did make them a little bit wider than the front panels because the front panels didn't need to cover as much, whereas the back skirt panels have a bit more coverage. The 2 front skirt panels, they have a little bit of a gap in the middle where you can see her pants underneath. So now I'm matching the skirt panels right sides together. So these are the 2 front panel pieces that match exactly. So matching those right sides together and sewing them all the way around. The only thing that I don't sew is that top waist area, because I want to turn it right side out through that. So sewed all around those skirt panels, and then I'm trimming off the corners to remove that excess seam allowance and fabric. And then I also trim down the seam allowance as well, because I want to reduce the bulk as much as possible, because like I said, I will be turning these pieces right side out. So removing any bulk is the best way to go, in my opinion. I also clip the edges just where there's that slight curve. This, to me, helps with making sure that the fabric lays nice and smooth and flat when it's turned right side out. Trimming off excess seam allowance, as I said, I tend to just hold the skirt pieces up and cut upwards. And now it's time to turn it right side out. So I use something a little bit sharp and pointy to get those corners nice and crisp. I think sometimes using your fingers is fine, but it's always good to just use something a little bit more pokey. Once it's turned right side out, as you can see, it's a little bit puffy, so I do need to iron this nice and flat. And I'm making sure that the fabric is not folded over when I iron it. What I mean by that is that I'm pushing the seam allowance all the way to the very edge to make sure those edges are nice and crisp. So there we have it. We have one skirt panel done, and this is the front. I'm calling it the side, but it sort of sits on the side. It's one of the front panels. So here are all of the skirt panels done. I basically repeated that same process for all of the panels, the 2 front pieces and the 2 back pieces. And I really love how these turned out. The drape is so nice. The weight of the curtain fabric is just so perfect for this. I finally finished turning right side out all of the skirt panels. So I've got the 2 back panels along here and then the 2 front panels on the front. And I'm just trying to figure out how I want to attach it at the waist. So at the moment, there's quite a bit of excess above the waistline. So that's the waistline there. And the mannequin is adjusted to my height. So it is just above the ground like that. So I'm thinking of attaching the pieces together just like at this portion along each panel, and then at the front maybe having like a little cotton tape that extends, and then it will hook and bar at the front closed, and then that could be worn underneath the jacket, which is over there. So that's my thinking, but I'm really liking how the panels are looking so far. I just need to figure out this closure at the top. For the skirt panels, I've pinned them together, overlapping the edges just a little bit, so about 1 centimeter or so. At the back, I overlapped it a little bit bigger, so about 2 centimeters, just because I wanted this to lie on top of the other panel at the back, and then it would, like, as it splits open towards the bottom, it still stays closer together. I didn't find that the side panels were having any trouble with that. So that's what I'm going to do for these points here, is just sew them down. And I'm going to finish off the top with a waistband out of the same fabric. So I've cut out this strip of fabric, which is 30 inches long and 3 inches wide. And I'm going to sew this like, actually I might do it this way, along the selvage edge. And I'm going to sew it along here and then flip it. I'll go through the process, but basically sewing the waistband with this, and then it will close with a skirt hook and bar. I've now top stitched down each of those panels, so you can see what that's looking like from the outside and then also from the inside, so it overlaps quite a bit. There's the middle one at the back, and there's the other side seam. And I'm just going to quickly check in the mirror that this is still all the right length. So I just checked, and the skirt panels are all nice and even along the hem, which is great. So next up, I'm going to sew this waistband to the top of the skirt panels. So I've got the wrong side of the skirt panels facing upwards, and then I'm going to sew the right side of the waistband to that. And I've just started by pinning, well, I haven't pinned it yet, but I've marked, well, I've not marked either, but I have mentally marked where the center of this waistband is, matched it up to the center back of the skirt panels, and I'm literally just going to sew all the way down along there. that's sewn down, it's time to trim the seam allowance. So for this, I'm really just trimming off the fluffy excess selvage edge, because I think that's just going to create a bit of bulk, which I don't want, so chopping that all off. The edge is looking much cleaner now that that excess seam allowance is cut off. And when I flip it to the right side, you can see that the end of the waistband is still raw edges. So how I'm going to fix this is fold over this waistband right sides together. I'm going to make sure there's a little bit of an overlap of this raw edge compared to where this seam is. And I am going to sew along here and up this way, up to the fold. And I'm going to do that on the other side as well. So here's how the end looks when it's sewn. So you can see that it's sewn up to the fold along this edge, and then also sewn to where it joins with the rest of the skirts. And I've also cut these corners off at where there's that excess seam allowance that I don't want, because I'm going to turn this right side out. So I'm going to turn this right side out and I'll show you what it looks like. I've already done this other side, so you can see it's nice and neat. And yeah, hopefully that gives you an idea of how this whole waistband thing works. So turning this one right side out, and then I'll start pinning the raw edge along the whole waist underneath and pinning it down like that. I'll again show you what I mean a little bit later when I get up to that stage. All right, so the end has been turned right side out, and you can see how this then just naturally wants the raw edge of the waistband to fold under and hide the rest of the raw edges from the skirts. So when pinning this, this is on the outside of the skirt, and on the underside there will be visible stitching along the bottom here, but because that's on the inside I don't really care. And obviously it needs a good press with the iron as well. So that is basically how I'm going to complete the skirt. And at the very end, the last step will be to attach a hook and bar at these 2 points. And then that will be it. And I'm not sure how much I will film of all of that, but generally that's how the skirt's being put together. Here's the waistband all pinned from the right side, and I just need to stitch all of that down. So I'm going to stitch all the way along, starting from the very edge here and stitching all across where the pins are and finishing down here. And then after that, giving it a good iron. Yay, the skirt is done. Just need to add the hook and bar closure, but I will get around to doing that when watching TV at some point. But look how good it's looking. I just gave all of the panels another iron. I obviously ironed down the waistband as well. And let me just take off the jacket so you can see. Yeah, that's it for the skirt, really. Nothing too much else to show. I think next steps are the white undershirt. And I also am still waiting for my awl so I can put the whole eyelet things into the sleeves and the shoulder of the jacket. So still waiting to do a few things, but also I can progress on the next thing, which is the undershirt, but I'll probably get around to doing that this weekend. But really looking forward to finishing this. It's really coming together so nicely, and I'm just so happy with how it's all coming, like just how it's all looking. I love it so much.